to the strange twist in society is that being biologically correct in your terminology can actually get children suspended from school, or you, as an adult, could get charged with a felony or at least fined a significant amount of money. So let's cover these two stories here. So the first one is a California school suspends 2 children for misgendering a classmate. This is originally published by Fox News. I found it on the New York Post. And I'm going to go through this whole story here because it's really interesting, all the levels there are to it. Starting off with a California school district suspended 2 children 5 days after a misgendering incident took place and then subjected them to a training called restorative justice. And we're going to cover what that means, according to an email reviewed by Fox Digital. The email was sent by a recently departed principal of Herbert Hoover High School located in Glendale Unified School District. It was reported by GUSD Parents' Voices. The former principal, Jennifer Earle, described 2 students who misgendered a transgender student and then ran away as a teacher attempted to correct them. Quote, I suspended 2 students for 5 days each today and will be conducting restorative justice with students and teacher for the, quote, misgendering. In interviewing them, they admitted to being curious about a transgender person, Earle said. Quote, I asked the teacher involved in the incident how he wanted to handle it, if he wanted me to just teach them about misgendering, or would he like me to speak about being trans? He asked me to educate on transgender. It was well received from students and parents. Restorative justice will happen after the suspension, the email said. GUSD, their school district, explained to Fox Digital that they make determinations if a misgendering, generally defined as using the wrong pronouns, is considered bullying based on whether a student's perceived intent. A student, quote, has never been punished, much less suspended for accidentally using the wrong pronoun to refer to a peer or staff member. However, a student could be suspended if the action escalated to, quote, harassment or bullying, a spokesperson said. The district website explains restorative justice on its website. So first, before I get to restorative justice, because that's an interesting thing in and of itself, but the whole idea of harassment and bullying. So I do not condone harassment or bullying as a legal standpoint. No, you should not harass somebody for having the mental illness that is gender dysphoria. You should not harass somebody for that. You should not bully somebody for that. They need help. You should not harass or bully them. But the problem is that people who want to be biologically correct and do not want to perpetuate a lie, for whatever reason that is, whether it's conviction to truth, conviction to biblical reality, or just simply not agreeing with the idea that men can turn into women, if you say the truth that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and you can't change that, to some, that is considered harassment or bullying. And so that's the problem, is when you use vague terms like harassment and bullying, is it really harassment or bullying, or is it simply that somebody is not going to perpetuate a lie? That's really the thing. But let's get into restorative justice, because if you're like me, you might not have really heard these words before a certain experience or something. You might not have ever heard these words ever. But restorative justice is essentially re-education of students and gaining control over a situation based on the perceived wrongs they committed. So first, the person making the restorative justice circle. So they have a circle, and you to talk about barrier-breaking questions such as, what is the greatest value that guides your life? What gives you most security? If you could smash one thing, what would you smash? Describe the ideal family. The district's website continues. So this is all off of their school district's website describing restorative justice. And it says on their website, when there is harm or conflict within the established community, restorative responses help repair the damage. This is done through processes that bring harmed and harmers together to address root causes of conflict, support accountability for those responsible, and promote healing for impacted individuals. As a result, community is once again restored, bringing back a sense of belonging to all. On Facebook, I'm going to share my screen here in a moment to show you a bar chart, or not a bar chart, but a T-chart that shows some different things about the restorative justice stuff. But this is one thing that's also listed on the website that's honestly kind of alarming is that part of one's physical needs vis-a-vis restorative justice is listed as sexual expression, according to the school district. So part of restorative justice is talking about sexual expression to minors. It sounds like partially a footnote, but also something that deserves more than a footnote in terms of questioning it. A spokesperson added, quote, "In Glendale Unified, we work together with our parents as partners to create safe, inclusive environments where every child can learn and thrive. We follow all laws and policies established by California legislature and the Department of Education." So now I want to go to this is a restorative justice chart that I'm showing on Facebook and everything. That has been acquired by the New York Post, in which it shows that it's about control as well as support, encouragement, and nurturing. So pressure limits expectations on one side, on the bottom, support, encouragement, nurturing. And it's so too punitive. So it's about, it's really kind of crazy, the kind of stuff that they're coming up with, but it's essentially a back end way of re-educating people through indoctrination because of, again, perceived moral wrongs that are committed. And so here's what I'm going to do is I want to go on a little rant here briefly about all these different justices that the left comes up with, because many people have heard of things like social justice. And then there's also this restorative justice that's being talked about, right? Okay, well, I want to start off with social justice because that's what a lot of this is. We hear about social justice warriors, people that are for reproductive rights and are for BLM and for climate action now, all that kind of crap. Occupy Wall Street, social justice warriors. Well, the entire idea of social justice is crap. It doesn't make sense. Linguistically, it doesn't make sense. Let's break this down from the words themselves. Social and justice. So social is rooted in the Latin word socius, which means friend or ally. So social, socius, friend or ally. Well, that means social and socius are inherently subjective. Now, why is that important to recognize? Okay, so friend, if somebody is your friend, it means that you have a subjective view of them. You have a positive view of them. You are not objective on that person. You would go to bat for that person. They're an ally of yours, a friend. You are biased. If you see someone as a friend, you are inherently partial towards that person. Social, socius. Justice, on the other hand, is definitively objective. It is meant to be at least definitively objective. Justice, by definition, is the quality of being fair and reasonable. And that's according to Merriam-Webster. The quality of being fair and reasonable. Look, you're not going to be necessarily fair to a friend. You are going to put that friend on a pedestal, just as like in the opposite, you're not going to be fair to an enemy. So if society is not fair, we know that. Society in and of itself is not fair. It's not impartial. We don't have an impartial society. It can often be unreasonable as well. People get jobs. Here's an example. Nepotism, right? Nepotism. You can get a job and might have a better time getting a job because your dad or your mom worked in that place before you, your grandfather. Now, is that fair necessarily to somebody who worked their butt off and didn't have a parent and actually has better merit to get in? No. That is unfair. That is unjust. But it's the way society and our social sphere can work. Now, what does this all have to do with social justice? Well, you can't put those two words together. It's an oxymoron because you're taking something that is definitively subjective, social, society, socius, which is the Latin root, and you're taking that and pummeling it together with justice, which justice in and of itself, yes, maybe our justice system isn't always fair, balanced, and impartial. Maybe it's not. But the entire idea of justice, you cannot have justice that is rooted in society and rooted in being in social, in socius, in being a friend, ally, in being partial. You can't have that. Social justice is crap. Now, bring that back to restorative justice, the thing that these kids are going to have to go through because they misgendered a student, because they followed biological accuracy. Honestly, I think if you look at that word and those words together, restorative justice, it's entirely redundant. It's just stupid. Justice, if you're actually having justice, is in and of itself meant to be restorative. Look, if you steal $20 from somebody and you get brought to small claims court and are ordered to pay $20 back to that person and then serve a few nights in jail or something because you committed the action of stealing it, that is restorative. The person got $20 back and you had a punishment for it. Time to reflect. Or maybe you got community, you probably wouldn't get nights in jail. Community service. That's restorative in and of itself. That is restorative justice. But instead, restorative justice, as this school would like to push it, means to indoctrinate and re-educate young children to no longer have a sense of objective truth. Basically, create little illogical robots who will preach oxymoronic social justice, which I just described. Because social justice makes no sense. Restorative justice is redundant because restorative justice is really restorative injustice. It's Pink Floyd, another brick in the wall. We don't need no education. We don't need no mind control. Tell them that. Because that's what restorative justice is it's trying, and it's just like what me and David Shestokas talked about last week on this exact show. Why do you think in schools they don't teach that part of our founding documents in this country have to do with the right of the people to stand up and rebel against their nation? Why do you think they don't teach that? They don't teach that because they don't want you to do it. Because an educated populace is harder to control. An uneducated populace will not only easily be controlled, they'll also be pawns for the propaganders, whatever it would be. They'll be pawns for them to spread more propaganda and more crap. And so that is why they have restorative justice, which is really re-education. So yes, you can be suspended from school. A child can be suspended from school, in California at least, for being biologically accurate.